3, 2, 1.
What's up, everybody? Ian Walsh here, Hard Money Bankers, joined by my partner Josh Wyman, Hard Money Bankers. Josh, what's happening?
What's going on?
We have a very special guest today, not directly real estate related, but it would influence everybody in the real estate market because we have a major election coming up in the Philadelphia space. So we're joined with David O, who's been running for mayor in Philadelphia. And you know, we've had a couple people doing what you're doing, David, and running for mayor on the show. And honestly, people need to have their eyes on this, because if you're an investor in Philadelphia, if you live in Philadelphia, if you have kids in Philadelphia, whatever, there's a huge issue right now with crime and, you know, Philadelphia in general. I mean, the current mayor has basically thrown his hands up and literally said, I'm out, you know? So right. The next person to fill those shoes is going to be a very significant task in front of them. And you kind of have to really be cut from a certain kind of cloth to be able to even want to step up to that plate, because it's not like you're just slotting into, you know, a smooth sailing situation. So are you the guy for that task? I mean, you know, first Republican to make it in 70 years, we talked about. Talk to us about what you got going on and how's it looking?
Yeah, it looks fine. I mean, you know, there's a lot of issues about perception, but as you said, it's so important that we don't just select a mayor off of 90-second sound bites. People are really not even paying attention to this race until yesterday. After they get their taxes filed, they start to tune in and start thinking about all those commercials they've seen, but they won't really focus until a couple weeks before the election. And the problem with that is there are so many very complicated issues. There are so many commitments to policies that have failed. They're proven failures. And yet the sound bites keep coming. And the perception is there is no other option. But there is. And that's what frustrates people. People on a daily basis, they look out into the city, they go to work, or they think about not coming to our city. And they wonder, well, why can't these things just be handled? And they can. And so people around their kitchen table have solutions for our city that if only they were implemented. And I think that becomes the problem. Who is going to implement those simple, common sense solutions to the problems we face? For example, why do we allow ATVs and dirt bikes to roar into our city, blowing through red lights, weaving in and out of traffic, carrying guns, whether they be legal or illegal, in hordes of 200 to 400 vehicles? How come race cars are doing donuts around police cars in front of large groups of people? Why is it that drug dealers are not arrested in Kensington Avenue? And how does such a place as Kensington exist? What is happening that people can't? Yeah, why do people not want to come in our city? Why is our public transportation system so filthy? Why is it being used as a place to house mentally ill, drug addicted people who live there, hurt each other there, defecate on those platforms? Is it any wonder people are not wanting to come back into our city to go to work or to be tourists? And when that happens, we don't receive the revenues, and we don't receive the revenues. All that burden falls upon our residents in new and increased taxes. You know, so if we don't improve the schools, if we don't improve the quality of life, if we don't clean up the city, but first of all, if we don't make it safe, then what we end up with is a community people don't want to live in. They actually want to move out of. And as you said, if you're anywhere in the real estate business, that's going to have a dramatic effect on your business.
Well, David, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Ian and I, you know, we talk a lot about some craziness in the news all over the planet, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of the things that are happening in major cities across the country right now, there's so much chaos going on and there's so many things that are going wrong. You got to ask yourself, like, where do you start? Because like you're saying, like, you know, you want a good education system, you want safe streets, you want clean, reliable public transportation. That's a lot of issues. You know, I think that when Reagan took office, he had a list of 3 items that were on a cue card that he kept in his back pocket, and that was his focus for 2 terms. So where do you go? I guess.
Yeah.
Is
How do
my
you
question.
attack it? How do you attack it?
Well, the first thing is you have to stop the bleeding, and that's something that's not happening. So when I talk about all those examples, it really is that we have to enforce the law. That message has to be sent, not only to the public, but to the perpetrators and would-be perpetrators. It is better for them that we let them know that the laws will be enforced, so they don't put in their mind that they're going to go break all of these laws and get themselves in trouble and go down a bad road. We have 2 major problems when it comes to, a source of the violence. So, for example, when there's violence in Center City or Rittenhouse Square, it's not the teens that live there that are doing it. The people are coming from other places, and those places are the places that everyone knows have inferior schools, have poverty, have a lot of frustration, and a failure to enforce laws to begin with. And so, we have to really deploy our police to deal with the hotspot areas, which is where the people feel that they're neglected. And today, young people just feel that this city does not care about them. They see it all the time. And so when we don't enforce the law, when we don't stop those vehicles that everyone in the neighborhood knows is out hunting for other juveniles to shoot them, to kill them, then it just shows that we don't care. We can see what they're doing on social media. We know where they gather. We know what's happening. And so people want a response. And that response is something that I shall give them. The other thing is Kensington Avenue and places like that. It is overrun with drug addiction. And therefore, the number of people who are involved in the drug trade is large. And the only way you hang on to a corner that's producing $200,000 a week is through deadly violence. And so there's murders, there's threats, there are other types of problems that arise. There's prostitution. It's overwhelming. And it's only happened because of the hands-off policy of this city, which is really based on good intentions. Some people believed that we should let drug addicted people get access to drugs, and therefore we don't address drug dealers. And so Kensington has become a place where drug addicted people from all over the region come to live and do their drugs. And there they are abused. It's inhumane conditions. They're exploited, they're harmed, they exploit others. There should be no place like that. What happens with all that money? It's not invested into the community. It funds other crimes most of the time. So when we talk about illegal guns or proliferation of ghost guns, how do people get all this ammunition? Well, part of it is coming from all the money that is made on Kensington Avenue. So if we address Kensington Avenue and those drug dealing hotspots, if we deal with the people, the very few people that are doing most of the shootings, carjackings, things like that, we would immediately have a safer city. But then we have to send a message that you will not plan your weekend on rolling into Philadelphia on your ATV and marauding through the streets of the city. Any message like that is very helpful. And then when we do that, we can immediately begin to show that we care. There has to be an immediate visible sign, as in clean subway system, transit police in uniform, patrolling and engaging, visible police officers in cars, talking with people, not turning a blind eye to crime. We have to have an immediate improvement in the conditions where people feel that they are completely neglected. So we could have long-term projects. I would do those, but first of all, put some stuff in the libraries, in the schools, and in the rec centers. Put things that kids want, actually. Like in my day, we would have talked about a basketball court. But today's kids, maybe we're talking about, gaming. We have to respond to the young people with what they want, and we also have to have in schools what they want as well. So it's not just we want you to go to college or become a plumber. We have a pathway to go to college. We have a pathway for you to be able to pay your tuition and to actually do that. But 70% of most countries, the students don't go to college. And for the most part, they go into a profession, a career, or something like that. And so we have to give them the training, that they want, the educational opportunities that they want. And so that has to be available in every school. And again, music and art and those type of things, those are things that interest kids. And I'm a big proponent of the creative arts economy. There's a great upward float there. In Philadelphia prior to the pandemic, it was $3.4 billion annually. It was $920 million in household income and $157 million in local taxes. So the attitude that the creative arts economy, like fashion, filmmaking, music, is like a hobby, it's not. And we should allow the young people to pursue what they want. That will get their attention. And yeah, maybe they'll want to go to college. Maybe they'll understand the value of math and English and proper spelling. There are things that we can do that are not huge in cost, but they make a direct impact. For example, in many of these neighborhoods, in addition to the fact they need longer hours in school, they need some enrichment. What do they have at home? They don't have much. And, the library can be greatly improved. There should be 3D printers. You should be able, through your library card, to go through a process of learning how to be responsible in returning books so other people can use it in good condition. And then maybe you could borrow a guitar, or maybe you could borrow a violin. Maybe you could borrow a science kit. Maybe you could learn other types of things. And maybe you could take home a device or a piece of technology that's worth $5,000 and keep it for a week, because you're building credit on your library card. If we don't provide a basis for these kids to learn about shared resources and credit and the value of being responsible, it's to their detriment. And everybody will say that, one of the biggest problems in our poorest, most violent communities is a lack of financial literacy and understanding of how the economy works. And so when we say, listen, keep that book, lose it, it's not something that you're going to be fined on. It's not something that you're going to have any type of responsibility for. What we're saying is the culture you had previously of respecting books and respecting public resources and community resources, we're removing that. And now the idea that you can actually get something valuable in a library is gone. What is in a library that's valuable? I mean, there's more books on my iPhone. I have more access to more things on my iPhone than a library. So we have to really upgrade and reimagine these things and provide people what they want.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, which I had a conversation with another guy running for mayor. So James DeLeon is running for mayor, and I wasn't sure how I felt about this approach. So we're gonna have now, when you have this much crime and you have this kind of reputation, there's going to be an ebb and a flow, right? There's going to be a swing to the situation. So somebody that likely the next person that gets voted in there is going to feel obligated to come in with a heavy hand. And 2 years from now, we're going to be talking about something like police brutality on the other side of it, right? So the other side of this whole thing is you come in like a truck and and people are going to get hurt. So like, where's the balance, right? Which ideally we would have, but I don't know that we're going to find. So James came up, he had mentioned, you had talked about earlier on social media, and this is new age, right? This is the new age. So right. The social media thing that he was proposing, though, was that I guess you can statistically come up with the individuals that are causing crime based on their activity on social media. And at first I was like, wow, that's a great way to head it off. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Now we're getting into censorship. And his argument was, once you're in the judicial system, you lose your rights as a citizen. So these would be for individuals that maybe were repeating in the criminal system. But I think it opens up a whole different door, in my opinion, of censorship and then freedom of speech and so forth. Where do you stand on an idea like that? Because that is a new age concept that we're going to have to deal with.
Right. Well, to start with what you were talking about, the shifts and swings, ebb and flow, as you will, of kind of handling crime. It is cyclical. It is. And so it's predictable, right? Somebody said, well, we're too heavy handed on crime. And so it would be better if we were more understanding, we reduce our law enforcement to the degree that eventually there's so much crime that people want to drop the hammer on crime, and then someone comes in and drops a hammer, and that works, and it creates a lot of problems too. And then some intelligent person says, well, why don't we, instead of dropping a hammer on everybody, really focus on where the problem is created? And so that, whatever you call it, focused deterrence, or, that is kind of that middle ground. We don't want to criminalize everybody in the neighborhood, or whoever is like 16 and wears a black jacket. We want to be targeted where we have actual evidence of a crime being committed, or having been committed. What we're not trying to do is to try to throw people into one category. Another thing is that we should not ever violate people's constitutional rights, civil rights. And that's where we get into this conversation that we're having now. It is the same thing as a middle ground, or to be put properly, a lawful ground. When you're heavy-handed on crime, the problem is it's overreaching and you're violating people's rights. And while you may be able to stop crime in the short term to some extent, you're creating another problem, and I would say a bigger problem. So if you, as mayor, if I instruct the police to go out and violate people's rights, that may limit certain things for a time, but behind that is a whole resentment of communities and a distrust, and eventually lawsuits and things like that. And the next person will come in, will be super light on crime, and will be someone who focuses on law enforcement rather than the people shooting people, stabbing and raping them. And that is a distraction, because that too is a overreaction that is not productive. So yeah, we can use technology, because technology is what's happening today. However, while we can monitor sites that talk about the upcoming shooting that's going to happen, what we're doing is we're taking the information to intervene and to protect. We cannot, take preemptive measures that are really just based on assumptions and things like that. So we can use the information to better protect. Now, if the person is arrested and convicted of a crime, that becomes part of the sentence. That's something we can do. But even persons who are convicted of a crime have constitutional rights. And I think it's so important that we solve this problem within the parameters of the law. And there are people who say, well, that's too weak on crime. I would say it's not weak on crime, because otherwise you have a government that begins to be the criminal. And that's why, in part, we have this problem right now. There has to be reforms. There has to be intelligent policing. The technology should help police to do a better job within the confines of the law, because we don't want to become a police state.
Well, I think it's interesting, because you and James should maybe run together as Democrat and Republican, because you guys actually you share a fairly similar view on it. I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's just a weird Pandora's box to open up in terms of censorship and everything going on right now in terms of information and Twitter, and like, is this censored? Is that not censored? But to some extent, we live in. You can't turn a blind eye to it either, right? We live in.
Yeah, what I'd say is, if someone's having a conversation in front of you saying, like, listen, we're going to get together, me and these guys over here at 11 o'clock tonight, right on that corner over there, and then we're going to jump these guys and shoot them full of holes. That's not censorship. You've overheard it, because we've said it in public. You're not stopping us from saying it, but you take that information, you let the police know, and so they're there to, when we gather with our illegal weapons and ghost guns, to prevent us from carrying out what we just said we would do. So it's the same thing, even though you're watching it on social media, that's out in public. It's not like a secret room or anything. These things are not done in secret. And that's the amazing part of this, that we have a situation right now where the young people are saying to the public, I am going to shoot this guy full of holes because this is what he did. And then we're retaliating because of this. This is when we're doing it, and this is why we're doing it. And after they do it, they have a whole rap song about it.
Yeah,
So that's where we are.
I mean, you're like, could you be that stupid where you're going to put it up? But my uncle was in the FBI for 20 years, and he's like, you just wouldn't believe how dumb criminals can be sometimes. And he's like, I think about that comment because I'm like, he's like, we've had that happen, things like that. You're just like, they literally tell you when, where, and how, and you're just like, come on, I can't even not look away from this,
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry to tell you that a lot of the people that are committing the murders and planning the murders are like 15 years old.
That's horrible.
So yeah, they're not actually that smart. And what's driving them, and they don't listen, they'll do it in front of a camera, they'll do it in front of a video camera. They don't care. And they do it in public. So just like people ask me like, well, how do you know all these people on ATVs and dirt bikes have guns? I'm saying they're not hiding it. They're showing you what they have.
Right. You don't have an inside tip. You're literally driving by with a gun. They're letting
you know. Now the issue, is it a legal weapon and they have a carry permit? Probably not, right? Most likely not. But we do have to act within the law. But the very fact of riding the ATV and dirt bike on our streets is a violation of the traffic laws, and we can stop them. And in that stop, we have to find them. And when we find them, we have to know who they are. And if we don't know that and they don't have the proper credentials, we seize the vehicles. And we can also arrest them. When we arrest them, we inventory them when we get to the police station. That is where a legal search occurs, because you get inventoried. That's not a search. Before you get put in a cell, everything on you is taken out. And that's where, if you have drugs, if you have illegal weapons, if you have all that stuff, that gets inventoried.
Awesome. Well, David, I know you're tight on time. You're actually jumping back to another situation for what you're doing, but I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you want to leave people with? I've been running your site has been davido.com on the bottom.
Thank you very much.
Pretty hard to miss. But is there anything you want to leave people with? Because this will go out to a couple 100,000 people. So
yeah, what I'd say is this election is too important to end on May 16th. The problem with our city is we've not had a credible Republican candidate in 20 years. And whether you're a Republican or not, even if you hate Republicans, the point is, by not having a Republican candidate, the entire election ends on May 16th. And so we elect people on 90-second sound bites. There's no depth to it. By me being in this race, we will extend that, where we won't have like 12 people on stage. We'll have 2 people having a very specific conversation about economic policy, about school improvement, about safe communities, jobs, and those type of things that are really critical. If we don't turn this around with the next administration, I think it will be very difficult to save the city. There's a point where you can reverse it, and there's a point where it really gets very, very embedded. Things that happen cannot be reversed. Teachers that quit, businesses that move out, people who sell their homes, they don't just come back. And so it is important for everyone to really want this race to go to November, to pay attention through the summer, the fall, and to really get to know what the issues are and make an informed decision. Because if you're like me, you'll be stuck with that decision, and so will my kids and my wife and everything else.
Awesome. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate having you on. And so when does everybody have to take action? May 16th? Is that when?
May 16th is a primary, but more importantly for me, write down November 7th. That is the general election. And pay attention to the issues and vote for the candidate that will deliver to you the best life for you and your family.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
Great. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.